Greetings collectors and welcome to today's retro game review. Today I'm taking a look at a true golden oldie. It's a franchise that's been left behind in the 90s, but brought entertainment to arcade goers all over the world. Today we take a look back at Space Harrier for the Sega Game Gear. For those of us born in the 1980s, Space Harrier has a very special place in our hearts. For many, it would have been one of the first encounters with Sega. Space Harrier was originally a 1985 arcade release. Its fast-paced action, bright colours and sci-fi theme made it a mainstay in the arcade for quite some time. So popular was the concept, it was eventually replaced by its slicker, faster child, Space Harrier 2. The nature of the fast action and hordes of enemies meant that Space Harrier could gobble up coins of children and adults alike. Along with Sega's Outrun and Afterburner, Space Harrier was a true golden age for Sega's presence in the arcade. Along with further games such as Golden Axe added to the roster, it was clear that Sega were going to dominate the arcades for quite some time. But what of the home market? Well, it wasn't until 1991 that Sega converted Space Harrier to the Game Gear, Sega's answer to the Nintendo Game Boy. Sega had previously released the game on its home Master System console. Recreating Space Harrier on a portable machine in the early 90s though was no mean feat. Even from the Master System version, it was clear that the game needed to be scaled down further. The sprite count alone was enough to make you wonder if the project was even possible. On top of this, the sprites would also have to be made relatively larger, as they were to be placed on a modest 160 by 144 screen with just 32 colours. So, what was the end result? Well, as you can see from the footage, it's a real mixed bag. The game does really well to even resemble the more powerful arcade original. It's clear that every attempt has been made to make this pint-sized version of Space Harrier true to its core arcade concepts. In truth, I personally feel that this conversion is deeply flawed. However, not because of the concept, but because of the hardware available. The game is reasonably tricky to play. The amount of flashing objects due to the sprite count is a huge issue. This leads to the occasions where oncoming enemy projectiles will appear right in front of you with little or no warning. You will be dying a lot in this game, in circumstances that seem a little unfair at times. No matter how good your reflexes, there's no escaping some of the enemies that will just appear from nowhere. You are compensated with a decent amount of lives, continues and a password system though, so completing the game is possible. I've personally been a long-term Sega collector, so I'm proud to show you a mint condition boxed version here. Inside expect a manual as well as a cartridge in a clamshell case. Bonus collecting points if you still have the plastic sleeve for the clamshell case. Overall it's really good presentation and the artwork is really iconic. In the UK, a mint box version similar to this one will run you anywhere from £20 to £40. If you are a collector here in the UK though, don't expect this to be an easy find. Outside of game collecting circles though, very few original boxed Game Gear games now exist. The nature of the boxes being made out of cardboard and the format itself being made to be portable meant that many were simply lost or discarded along the way. In the US, it can also be quite tricky to get hold of this game, especially if you're after a mint in box edition. The Game Gear was never a must-have item for many gamers in the US. As such, Game Gear collecting is a little more specialist. A loose copy of the game is reasonably easy to pick up for around $5 to $10. A mint in box edition though may set you back anywhere up to the $100 mark. If you don't mind collecting from outside your region though, Japan has a plentiful stock for only a few thousand yen. At the moment, it's unclear which way the long-term pricing will go in the US. Some Game Gear items are very scarce, especially if you're after a factory or mint condition collectible. On the other hand, it's such a specialist area of collecting that there just aren't the buyers to support the market. Eventually, this lack of interest could actually drive down the price. We're still in a collecting phase of finding out the fate of boxed Game Gear games in the US. If you are a US based collector, let me know, it's an interesting area to collect for. So, price aside, is Space Harrier for the Game Gear worth collecting? Well, this is the painful part of the show, where I give you the power to decide. Personally for myself, a mint condition Sega collectible is always going to have a place in my collection. Admittedly, it is more for what it is and represents rather than the gameplay itself. I only have to roll out Space Harrier 2 for the Sega Mega Drive or Genesis to play a far superior version of this game. Space Harrier 1 also appears on the Sega Ages 1 compilation for the Sega Saturn. This is a near perfect arcade conversion. When it comes to collecting Space Harrier for the Sega Game Gear, it's collecting for memorabilia and nostalgia's sakes rather than the actual gameplay itself. In some ways, this misses the point though. The Game Gear served the purpose of going mobile with your games. Back in the day, it was like taking an arcade with you as you sat in the back seat of a car, desperately hoping that you had enough batteries to feed the machine. Whilst this version of the game isn't the fluid experience of the arcade, it is certainly a technological triumph, a game that serves its purpose and does provide a real hit of arcade fun. When I picked this game off of my shelf for the review, I thought I'd only be playing for a few minutes. In fact, I actually spent a lot more time than I thought enjoying this game. It's a testament to the game design and the nostalgia factor that all this time later I could still pick up a flawed game and enjoy it for what it is. And really, that's the true strength of a Sega classic. Hello again, I hope you enjoyed today's show and thank you for the view. Remember, you can always comment, like, subscribe and find us on the social media sites below. Happy collecting!